Hi all, a warm welcome to all of you in the today's daily current affairs session on EduTap. My dear learners, I hope that all of you are healthy and preparing well for your upcoming exams. And when we talk about exams, the current affairs plays a very important part. And my dear learners, we all know that the reports and indices are really a very important part when it comes to these exams, and that is the reason that I am back with a very interesting session in which we will be discussing the World Malaria Report 2021. And this report is really a very important report to be covered from the exam point of view, and that is the reason that I have marked star on this particular report. So before starting the session, if you are new to our YouTube channel, kindly subscribe it and press the bell icon to receive all the latest updates of the courses and videos offered by us. And you can also join our Telegram channel to get the access to the PDF of these lectures. To join the Telegram channel, kindly click on the link given in the description below. So my dear learners, let's move on to the session. Let's get started. And today the topic of the discussion for our today's session is the World Malaria Report 2021. So my dear learners, whenever we discuss a report, we always tell you that these reports and indices are really very important from the exam point of view, because in the past year exams we have seen a lot of questions coming from these reports, and the report like this World Malaria Report 2021 is more important because it has been released by one of the very most important international organizations, that is the World Health Organization. And this was the very first dimension on which you are always required to cover any kind of report and indices, that is the releasing body. So my dear learners, when we talk about the releasing body for the World Malaria Report 2021, so the answer will be this report has been released by the World Health Organization. And this is one of the statements which are being made by the Business Standard, as this particular report states that India reported reduction in the malaria burden between 2019 and 2020. And this is once again a very important finding from this headline itself, that the India has reported a reduction in the malaria cases from 2019 to 2020. So one of the very most important finding from this particular report. Now let's discuss this particular report in detail, and let's see that what exactly are the key findings from this World Malaria Report 2021 released by World Health Organization. So my dear learners, here we will be discussing today very first the global key findings. And my dear learners, if we talk about the very most important trend in the malaria, then my dear learners, this report says that the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted all the malaria services, and this has led to a marked increase in the cases as well as death which are being related to malaria. And when we talk about the number of cases, then there were an estimated 241 million malaria cases which were reported in 2020, and this were in the 85 malaria endemic countries. And my dear learners, here you can see when we compare this particular number from the previous year, then we can directly see here that in 2019 this particular number was 227 million, and this number has now increased by 14 million to 241 million in year 2020. And that shows that how much this malaria disease has increased in the past 1 year, that is from 2019 to 2020, and this shows a 12% increase from over 2019. And my dear learners, when we talk about the number of deaths due to the malaria, then there were a total of 6,27,000 malaria deaths worldwide in 2020, which shows that what exactly is the negative impact of this particular disease in the all over the world. And my dear learners, when we talk about this 6,27,000 malaria deaths, it represents about 69,000 more deaths, and out of these 69,000 more deaths, 47,000, that is 68% of the additional 69,000 deaths was only caused by the disruptions which were being caused by the COVID-19 pandemic over the diagnosis, the treatment, all the important material which are being transferred for the as a step against this particular disease. And my dear learners, and here you can see that all the disruptions in the provision of the malaria prevention, diagnosis and treatment during the COVID-19 pandemic was the result of these 68% of the additional 69,000 deaths which are being caused by the malaria. Now moving ahead, my dear learners, this particular report also mentions that the WHO African region, with an estimated 228 million malarian cases in 2020, accounted for 95% of the cases. That shows that the malaria has most of the impact on this WHO African region. And my dear learners, apart from this, 29 countries accounted for 96% of the malaria cases globally, and apart from that, the 6 countries which have total accounted for 55% of all the malarial cases all over the world are Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Mozambique, Angola and Burkina Faso, which have together constituted 55% of the total malarial cases all over the world. And here, to sufficient this particular data, to complement this particular data, you can see a pie chart here which shows that this is all from the Africa region only, which shows 95.2% of the overall malaria cases, and here the other regions are only having a meager amount of this particular cases which is being caused by malaria. And here the list of all these particular parts have been mentioned here. You can go through them very quickly. So my dear learners, when we talk about the important findings from this particular report, what exactly are the key takeaways from here? See, all these numbers which we have discussed in this slide as well as in the previous slide are really very important from the exam point of view. The numbers like the 241 million malaria cases, the increase of 12% over 2019, then when we talk about that number of deaths, then these are also once again a very important from the exam point of view, and these numbers in the past have already been asked in the exam, and that is the reason that we have brought this particular report very comprehensively, so that you will not going to miss any kind of question from this World Malaria Report 2021. So my dear learners, now we have discussed the global findings, and now let's move on to the key findings from the other global areas. And my dear learners, here you can see that by around 2017 there were signs that the phenomenal gains made since 2000. See, by 2017, all the gains that all over the world had made against the malaria were plateaued. That means they were constant, and no more changes were being found there. And my dear learners, when we talk about those numbers, you can directly see here that 27% reduction was being found in the global malaria cases incidence. And when we talk about the mortality rate due to malaria, then there was nearly 51% reduction in the malaria mortality rate. And my dear learners, despite the challenges which are being imposed by the COVID-19, 72% of the insecticide-treated mosquito nets had been distributed in malaria. But when we talk about India, then India has lagged in delivering these insecticide-treated mosquitoes nets, as well as in other campaigns as well. India failed to deliver the performance. And now when we talk about the malaria-free nations, which is once again a very important finding that all of you are required to cover from the exam point of view, and here the report says that China and El Salvador were certified by World Health Organization as malaria-free in year 21, and this is really once again a very important information that all of you are required to remember from the exam point of view. And apart from that, the Islamic Republic of Iran, this particular name was specially mentioned by the report which is being released by World Health Organization, that the Islamic Republic of Iran has attained 3 consecutive years of zero indigenous cases in year 2020. And one more additional important point that you are required to remember from this particular part is that Sri Lanka was certified as malaria free in 2016, and it remains the malaria free. So my dear learners, this particular part is once again a very important that you are required to remember, and that's why this particular important part has been marked as star, as you are required to remember this particular part very importantly from the exam point of view. So I hope that this particular key findings from the global key findings section is very much clear to all of you. And now we are moving towards the key important findings for India. But before moving towards that, See, this particular report also says that the progress towards the 2020 milestones of the WHO Global Malaria Strategy was substantially off track. That means all the steps which were being taken in order to fight against this malaria cases, the progress which was made towards the 2020 milestones of the WHO has become off track, and now really we are going to have a very strict actions are required in order to achieve those milestones. And that's why it says that if expeditious actions are not being taken all over the world, then there will be a resurgence of this malaria disease, which is really very disastrous for all over the world. And now, my dear learners, moving towards the India specific findings, which are really very important from the exam point of view. So when we talk about the India, this report says that India is one of the highest burden countries globally. But one more important point that this report says that from 2019 to 2020 there was a reduction in the malarial cases in India. That means the reduction in the malaria cases was reported in India from 2019 to 2020, but the only point was that this rate of reduction was lower than it had been before the pandemic. That means all over India has performed well, as the number of cases has decreased from 2019 to 2020, but the reduction rate was lower, which was before the COVID-19 pandemic. So my dear learners, apart from that, one more important point that you are required to remember from this particular part is that India accounted for 83% of the cases and 82% of the malaria deaths in 2020 in the WHO Southeast Asia region. And once again, a very important figures that you are required to remember from the exam point of view, and this number is really very probable to be asked in the exam. That is, India accounted for 83% of the cases and 82% of the total malaria deaths in 2020 in the WHO Southeast Asia region. So do remember this particular part, as this is really very important from the exam point of view. Okay, apart from that, some other important figures have been mentioned here, that India is among the 11 countries, the name of these 11 countries has been mentioned here, which accounted for 70% of the total global estimated cases burden and 71% of the global estimated deaths. See, these data which are grouped together, they are not that much important from the exam point of view, but still you can remember them. But when we talk about the main, what exactly is the main figure which is required to be remembered, then my dear learners, this particular part is that the numbers of the malaria cases in 2020 all over the world and in India. Apart from that, what was the mortality rate due to the malaria in the world as well as in India, and what exactly was the most affected region. These parts are really required to be remembered from the exam point of view, because they are really very probable to be asked in the exam. Apart from that, what exactly is the status of India? See, in India, the malaria cases, there was reduction in the malaria cases reported from 2019 to 2020. However, the rate of reduction was lower. So these parts from these key findings are really very important from the exam point of view. And my dear learners, I hope that this is very much clear to all of you. And now there is a question for all of you, which is a homework question, and all of you are requested to answer this question in the comment section below. And the question is, which one of the following countries were certified by WHO as malaria free in 2021? Okay, and all of you are required to answer this question in the comment section below, whether it is option A, B, C, D and D. Please answer the question in the comment section below. See, apart from this particular part, we have already discussed that what exactly is important. The important thing is the total malaria cases in 2020, what was the percentage increase, what were the number of cases in India, and what was the mortality rate in India due to the malaria cases are really very important. And apart from that, these malaria free nation sections was also very much important from the exam point of view, as they have specially mentioned the name of these countries in this particular report. So I hope that this is very much clear to all of you, and that was the homework question for all of you that you are required to answer in the comment section below. So my dear learners, that was all from the today's session, and I hope that today's session was useful and fruitful to all of you. And if you have liked the session, please give a thumbs up in the comment section below, and if you have any query, then you can drop us a mail at hello@edutab.co.in, and you can also call us at 8146207241. So my dear learners, thank you for joining us. Wish you all happy learning.